So next, we have Jeff Zahorchak. And I think, as you just heard Dave say, we've been learning about these organizing principles. So for example, I think Dave put a really interesting idea out there, which is that collecting more than 10 or 12 teams just might not work. And I think we need to think about how that applies to our work, that transparency is critical, that connected value streams are critical. And throughout the day, you're actually going to hear some of these bigger ideas, like you just heard from Dave, and then just practical recipes and best practices for how you can implement those. So we're going to move into that more practical bend right now with Jeff's presentation of how you actually go about connecting a value stream so that the team can work effectively in a very complex environment, regulated environments. This is a talk from Select Medical. So I'll just hand it over to Jeff right now, and we'll learn all about that.
Thanks. Pleasure. Cool. So good morning. My name is Jeff Zahorchak, Manager of Enterprise Applications at Select Medical. And what we're going to talk about today, my talk's about our journey and how we really got started leveraging Tasktop and some of the organizational changes we've been able to take on. I could also subtitle my presentation 90 Days to Live, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But one of the challenges we had and that we wanted to overcome was how quickly could we get this up and running and start to make these changes in our environment. So some cool stories there. A little bit about Select Medical, if you haven't heard of us. We are the nation's largest specialty healthcare provider. So this means that we have 4 really large lines of business. First is that we deal with critical illness recovery hospitals. This is people who are in the hospital, have an ICU level of care, but are going to be there for 2 or more weeks. Really need that most critical care in the hospital. We specialize in that. We have almost 100 of those hospitals that we run nationwide. We also have inpatient rehabilitation, so 30 different hospitals that we run there where people are recovering from a stroke. They might be on a ventilator. They're trying to recover and get back to a normal quality of life. So another line of business there. We work a lot in the occupational medicine and physical therapy space, so over 1,600 outpatient centers across the country. This is going to be sports medicine, hurt my shoulder, need to recover from that, so that type of work. And we also operate in the urgent care and occupational medicine. Might have worked with us called Concentra. It's an area where you can go to get that urgent care, and it's actually a referral source into occupational medicine and physical therapy, so it's kind of all aligned in that line of business. We have 47,000 colleagues across the country that we support, most of those folks on the front line working with their patients, clinical type staff. And at any one time, 300 active IT and IS projects with a staff that isn't that large. So trying to be efficient, trying to maximize our delivery, really, really key to Select Medical's culture and how we deliver what we do. Each day we touch the lives of over 60,000 patients. Field over 2,000 support calls through our Solutions Center, and fulfill over 600 service requests, again, with an IS team that is nowhere near that size. So really try to do what we can there. The obligatory About Me slide. I collect obscure and fun project management certifications, so I've got all my logos up there. But Manager of Enterprise Apps, what I basically am over top of ServiceNow, that's our ITSM platform, self-service, incidents, problems, change requests, all that type of stuff. Our SQL database stack, so all of our databases and all of the architecture there. Collaboration products, SharePoint, Skype, Rocket Chat, Slack, all those types of tools are underneath of my team. I'm manager over DevOps, so any of our source control, build, deploy, and all of our project management and tracking technologies. So kind of nice portfolio there. And again, where my journey with Tasktop started is that challenge I was brought in to Select to work through. How can I maximize the efficiency and the effectiveness of our solution and service delivery across all of those patients, all of those systems, and all of those things we need to support every day? So everything starts with that problem statement. From an implementation perspective, the systems that we build are great. They work together. They talk to one another. Data interfaces, data flows, everything's working. However, as we looked at how do we deliver and how do we do what we do, our service delivery methodology, our project management approaches didn't scale the same way. So what that led to is kind of these speech bubbles, and we'll go back to these a bunch of times through my presentation. But we tried to identify what are those 5 areas where we really needed to address that, right? So the first is that our requests for work, our fulfillment requests, were all coming in through multiple sources. I have Skype, I have email, I have meeting minutes, I have Post-it notes, carrier pigeons, right? All those types of things that you just couldn't really get a handle on intake and on demand management. That led into it being challenging to work across teams, to how do you plan for that work if you don't even know what it is? Results of various silos of data means as we're working through all these different projects that came from different sources, we're entering things into multiple tracking systems. Every project manager has their own Excel wizardry that you had to track in. Some developers were using some of our ALM tools, a TFS or a Jira, things like that, requests in ServiceNow, but no synchronization, nothing working together. What that really kind of resulted in is an organizational culture where it required us to be heroic to deliver and to meet deadlines and to meet those customer expectations. So everybody's always running at 110%, and we're just not doing as much as we can. And that means that at the end of the day, we're missing opportunities to be able to deliver more for our customers. So really our problem statement in a nutshell, right? So the first thing we wanted to address is that work requests from multiple sources. We wanted to get a control on intake and demand and basically bring that information into our teams in a way that was repeatable and measurable. So we first started by a little bit of development. We built a custom web app. We called it Zipline. Put your request on the Zipline. It's all downhill from here. It's a great joke. But basically got us out in front of our executive leaders to say, here is our intake form. Identify kind of the measurables. How are we going to know that this project is successful or this delivery is successful? What are those metrics? What are those identifiers? What kind of timelines? Is this regulatory? Is it because the medical board told us we had to do it and we need it done tomorrow? A way to start to determine some prioritization and to get those ideas into our systems. So started with that intake, and that really resolved it. I mean, the adoption has been through the roof. The executive leaders love it. We've enhanced it to give them the ability to vote, and it almost operates like the ability to prioritize those requests right through the system, live. Our CEO is going in and signing off on requests and moving them through the system. So it's a fantastic way to bring that intake into our Agile and DevOps culture and still get those stakeholders to be involved, but also to do it in a way that's not cumbersome. We then started to look at that challenging to plan across our teams piece. And what we really decided to focus on there, and this is where we started to investigate tools and technologies like Tasktop, it required us to really look at our service delivery ecosystem. And we looked at that in kind of three areas. One was application lifecycle management. Second was project and portfolio management. The third was our service delivery. And it really had to connect all three of those together, because if you just address any one, there's parts where the different types of activities that our team members did fell off the stage, right? You're looking at application lifecycle management being how do we rapidly build and produce the products and the solutions that our customers need. The project and portfolio management, how do I make sure that I have the necessary colleagues and resources available to deliver and that I can meet those business objectives and how they're prioritized. And then service delivery, how do I make sure that things I've introduced, especially in a highly regulated medical environment, are meeting expectations, are working, or functioning? And we really had to address all three of those areas throughout the whole solution and the whole solve stage of this. So what we then said is, okay, let's go ahead and get started with Tasktop. And this was back in June of 2017. And we entered into a 6-month subscription with them to get started. And we were challenged, get this up and running in 90 days or less. And that we said, okay, that's a great thing. We can install the product, we can click around, we can probably get things connected. But as soon as we kind of entered onto that journey, we realized that that's the really easy part. That's like a very easy point and click. Integration Hub is awesome, right? What we looked at though is there's a bunch of things we needed to do first to get our house in order. So we said, okay, here's our punch list, right? Have to simplify our tool set. Excel's not going to work here. Microsoft Project, why are we even doing that? We're an Agile shop. How do we get that down to what we actually needed so we had the right tools with the best possible functionality and features across them to maximize our productivity and our delivery? obviously had to gather requirements. We talked through how are we going to make this work, what data fields do we need, how do we flow, and what we really arrived at, it kind of interesting, systems of record and systems of action, right? So we wanted to make sure that we could deliver a parallel experience. If I'm a application team member and I'm working inside of my DevOps tool stack, why can't I just work my incident there? Why do I have to go over to ServiceNow and do that? Why am I tracking on 2 different dashboards what's assigned to me, what's in my queue, what's on my backlog? So we tried to give that first-class experience on every tool that we're using to really merge them together and bring that user experience to the front and center for our IT staff and our IS staff. We standardized our processes and our workflows. So we really looked at how do you take best of breed from all of the different teams who each had their own way of doing things and come up with what are our stakes in the ground. These are the 4 or 5 things you have to do. And then here's the areas where we can be flexible, not over-process, not over-govern it, and say, still allow people to be creative, to innovate, to drive improvement, and to deliver value, while still making sure that we are getting the reporting and metrics and data that we need to make intelligent decisions. We then had to actually go through and execute the training of that staff, right? And that actually was the biggest amount of time that we spent, because what we realized is everybody knew there are certain textbook definitions. Yep, this is agile. We have a backlog. Okay, what does that mean? What do I do with it? So it's a lot of that mentoring and growth. And in fact, we've gotten to a point where as part of onboarding into the IS department, even if you're not in product development or design, everybody is now trained on Agile and Scrum, which is kind of our core tenets in terms of how we do what we do. And that's part of that onboarding of a new employee. That's part of their 90-day plan as they join the company. And it's become core to our culture to look at those values and say, these are the things that are expected of you. We then looked at our ALM tools and said, okay, let's configure those. Let's make those work in a way that's effective. And let's make sure that there's parity across the different pieces. So if I have this capability in ServiceNow, I need the same thing in TFS so that it flows and works in the same way. We then finally got to the point where we installed Tasktop, and then a couple days later, we had everything up and running from a technical perspective. So that part was easy, check the box, right? Great. This was our landscape on day one. And the size of the icons kind of represents their importance in that, right? It's kind of like our heat map of what did we do? And what we really found was we were very heavy still on that Microsoft project, kind of that Scrum fall or waterfall type planning and estimation, budgeting, and it just didn't scale. Tons and tons of SharePoint, which is great because we manage SharePoint, but at the same time, we probably don't need an individual task tracker on 200 different project sites that people have created over 10 years, right? Just not in a scalable way to manage that. Excel, everybody loves it. Macros that don't work when you email files to people, lots of time troubleshooting that. And then really where we started to raise the bar was looking at ServiceNow and Microsoft TFS, which were tools we already had in-house, but we just weren't using them to their maximum potential. So by the time we got to the end of that requirements and mapping, we eliminated a lot of that extra stuff. And we said, these are going to be our 2 systems of truth and systems of record for how we do what we do. We said from a ServiceNow perspective, let's use that for the things that it's core at. ITSM, request management, incident management, problem management, change management, and really make sure that we're maximizing those capabilities. And let's use TFS, and not only to do our DevOps, our Agile, our source code management, our testing, but also let's build the layers we need to do project and portfolio management directly in that tool. So let's configure it, customize it, build some custom work item types, all that fancy stuff that you can do. And can we actually build all of the reporting, management, and visibility layers all right directly in there, and then flow data back and forth between them? And that really, the goal of this was all about removing that need to enter data in multiple sources, right? We're already busy enough. I don't want to have to go over here, close my incident, and then go open a task and track the fact that I spent 3 hours in my sprint on it. Just didn't make sense, right? Didn't scale and wasn't an efficient use of the team's time. In that next kind of half of the project, what we really looked at were, how do I bring that feature parity? This is some examples from our TFS world where we looked at features functionality there and said, okay, TFS doesn't support picking a location to say a ticket was open from a hospital. TFS doesn't know that Jeff's a caller and he called the help desk to open up that incident. So what we actually did, we were able to leverage Tasktop and its ability to feed data right from our artifact streams into SQL Server. And we actually extended TFS, wrote a whole bunch of custom UI extensions for it to build all of those widgets, all of those interactivity areas where we can now search for somebody by their username, their employee ID, their caller information, and actually have all that there the same way that it was in the incident form. So we mirrored that functionality. We actually did user experience and user design in our IT tool set. Same thing we would do for our customers, we did for ourselves. And by doing so, these are actually out on the Microsoft Store. You can download them for free, but there's actually a whole integration pattern that builds by leveraging Tasktop to pull that information out of our artifacts, feed it in, and then we can expose it now right through the front end. Huge time saver, and system as truth is the same in both systems. So we got to the point now where we said, okay, let's build our integrations. We got down to our two tools. We got feature parity between them. We have all our data mapped. And we basically hit the button, and on day 90 successfully went live with Tasktop. So our initial rollout was to one team of about 48 analysts and developers. It was our epic EMR project where we're rolling out an electronic medical record system to 160 hospitals nationwide, 3 at a time, every month, over 5 years. So a crazy project. And in that first day, we realized, wow, this team is really busy. We had no visibility as to why they were having a hard time meeting their project goals, when we realized that same group of team, 48 people, were assigned 1,278 help desk tickets in 24 hours. So immediate impact by getting that data, getting that out of the two different repositories. Your service manager is looking at ServiceNow and saying, yep, everybody should be available. Your delivery manager is looking in TFS and saying, yep, got everything loaded up, we're at 100% utilization, our sprints are full. And what we realized is we were double loading the resources and nobody knew. So immediate benefit by saying, wow, we need to restructure our team, we need to look at our processes and really adjust them to make that fit. Immediate insight and value. And what it ended up leading us to do is actually separating our delivery teams and our support teams and building a structure where we can dynamically scale them both based on demand at the time. We then looked at kind of what can we do next with it. So we obviously we rolled out for one team, but we have hundreds of teams across our different parts of the organization. We needed a solution now to scale and to how do I ramp this up? How do I go faster? How do I make sure that now that I'm syncing 1,200 new incidents a day, how do I make sure that when I have to go in and remap something, I don't have an interruption to that synchronization, right? Customers aren't getting their response. I'm not resolving the ticket fast enough if I have to take Tasktop down and remap something and wait for 4 hours for it to synchronize. So we actually started to, by leveraging some of these scripts and extensions on the Tasktop product, we embedded web services inside of all of our transformations and mapped them to database structures where we can actually map teams, destinations, service levels, targets, all this information dynamically and on the fly, and basically just do those transformations based on data in a SQL Server table. So what that meant was I could now reconfigure my whole mapping within Tasktop just by changing a row in a database and hitting commit. As soon as I'm doing that, the next artifact that goes through is now correctly following those synchronization patterns. So I could change my workflow on the fly. I could dynamically say on Tuesday at 8 p.m., this team's going to start synchronizing. This team only synchronizes from this hour to this hour, and then it escalates to a tier 3 help desk. And we were able to make the product and the mapping and that whole value stream match how we deliver our services. So huge amount of value by having a tool that was able to be customized on the fly like that, and some great patterns if you haven't known that you can do that, being able to weave web services right into your transformation scripts in Tasktop. So then what we said is, okay, we've done incident, what else is kind of in our service delivery ecosystem? And this is just a snapshot we pulled out of our production environment from when we sent the deck in for the presentation. And we now basically have built almost 16 new integrations. We're moving all kinds of different artifacts. We're moving requests from our service catalog through. We're moving user access items for security through. We're moving all of our data from our different artifact types and starting to funnel that all into reporting repositories to look at how can I start to build those analytics and project management metrics automatically. And what we're trying to do here is really get rid of those heroics, right? Now, if I have a predictable stream of work, I know that my support, my requests, my project work are all in my same sprint. I can do effective capacity management. I can manage my velocity, and I can staff appropriately for the demand while still getting all those deliverables that I need for making sure that my VP and my director are happy and getting those out the door just by pushing a button instead of having to copy and paste data and build Excel graphs all day. So we basically automated maybe 20 or 25 different project deliverables that we needed, and now it's all just reports that run off of the value stream. Where we've kind of landed as everything's finished up is where our ecosystem is today. We've obviously taken more and started to really expand into those additional tools and vendors that Tasktop allowed us to connect through. We did reintroduce some of the SharePoint integration, but now we're automatically synchronizing things out of lists and request forms and tables and things like that. We've got a full reporting implementation with a whole layer of dashboards inside of SSRS. We're actually now using Tasktop's gateway pattern to pull items in real time out of Zipline and feed them right into the backlog, so there's no more re-entry of data. And we're just starting down the path of full automated regression testing and starting to leverage another partner, which is Test Complete, to really bring that automated testing out to the forefront. And where we like to go is now, how can we prove that this is working, right? Because after that 90 days and then after the 180 days, it was time to renew the contract. So what we did is started to look at some of that service delivery data. And one of the challenges is, well, we're making all these other changes in parallel. So what we did here is use the data right from that reporting repository and said, let's look at our aging tickets, things that are a call into the help desk. We're not resolved yet, right? It's out of our service level, things are stale. And what those 4 boxes on the graph represent are literally turning the switch to enable the whole Tasktop and that integrated ecosystem of service delivery in the next 5 days. And what you see in every one of those boxes is an immediate and noticeable dip in how many tickets are stale. By getting that data right out into the work stream and making sure that those items are getting prioritized appropriately, in every single case, we've been able to show a measurable improvement to our customer delivery, and we've been able to validate that we're actually resolving issues and producing the right things for the customer at the right time. Really gets us to that, addressing that area of missing those opportunities to deliver more, right? If I can fix that bug and that eliminates 12 other things I need to do in my work stream, it's a huge efficiency for both the customer and us as a delivery team. And those kind of outcomes, that single pane of glass that we really arrived at, we now have that singular entry point for our customers. We've really increased the transparency, kind of like Dave mentioned, Scrum raising that transparency, that role of the Scrum Master. We're doing that all the way up through our reporting stack to our steering teams, our executive leadership. They're looking at live dashboards right out of the value stream. That's a pretty impressive thing. It's almost frightening when you have that much transparency because you realize somebody marked something done and wow, the CEO knew about that in 15 minutes. And getting that call for the first time was pretty shocking, but very cool that they looked at the dashboard. We now have that integrated resource planning and reporting. So we're able to take the workload, the forecasting. We've effectively eliminated timesheets because we're able to pull all that data right out of the Scrum planning process and kind of show where our resources are planning, what activities they're doing, how they're affecting outcome, and that tying those deliverables right to the work that they're doing in the tool stack. And what we're really getting is more satisfied customers. help desk tickets are down 15% since we put this process in place starting in 2017. And what it's allowing us to do now is to take resources that were previously just glued to the phone and get those resources into new opportunities where they can help innovate and change, drive new enhancements and better things for the customer instead of just being in a support role. So it's allowing us to maximize a limited staff and really try to leverage that delivery model to bring new things to our market and to our customers. So again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, the opportunity to speak to you guys today. My team's actually here at this table, so if you guys do want to pick our brain on anything that we've done or ask any questions, again, really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you guys very much.